As is JAMI's annual Mental Health Awareness Shabbat, I thought it would be appropriate to use this as an opportunity for me first to give my own personal reflections before we move on to the Kabbalat Shabbat, on to Rabbi Daniel Epstein, who is the ambassador for JAMI, who will be leading Kabbalat Shabbat and sharing his own words of wisdom as well. I've chosen the backdrop back inside Shul specifically because I think there's strength in recognizing that when we are talking about something as significant as mental health issues, it's important to realize that we are part of one community, we are part of one kehillah, and able together, hopefully, to offer support and care for one another. A number of years ago, when I was in front of all of you in the pulpit, I spoke about my good friend Kilroy. I assume that Lawrence, you'll remember Kilroy. Kilroy was a gentleman who was 46 years old, actually, when the story takes place. It was during World War II. I'm not assuming that, Lawrence, you were around and able to think about and knowing people in those terms, but maybe you remember the story. He was based out of Quincy, Maryland, on the shipyard there, and was in charge of as a foreman, making sure that the ships would be built to the levels that they were supposed to be before they would be sent off, of course, accompanied by the soldiers, accompanied by the Navy, to go off and take part in fighting as part of the Allied forces in Europe and the South Pacific. Kilroy's job specifically was to ensure that the riveters did their job and they put the appropriate rivets into the ships to make sure that there wouldn't be any leaks, to make sure that it would be a perfectly sturdy boat. However, the riveters realized that what Kilroy was doing was counting each set of rivets and would write in chalk a tick mark to demonstrate that he had counted them already because you got paid per rivet. So the riveters realized all you need to do is just chalk, a bit of wax. So they just simply erased the markings of Kilroy. And therefore, when the next foreman came along, they double count, and you got double wages. A bunch of chachamim. Well, everyone needs to make a living. Kilroy realized that there too much payment was going on, and though the ships were doing well and everything was going forward, but the army couldn't afford those type of extra costs, not during a time of war. So instead of simply doing a tick mark or on a piece of chalk, instead he would begin to write, Kilroy was here. Kilroy was here. And eventually he would add on to it this cartoon image with this big nose and the eyes of Kilroy. Kilroy was here. So who's Kilroy? Well, the shipyard knew who Kilroy was, but because the ships didn't have a chance to get painted before they were sent off, the thousands of soldiers fighting in Europe and occupied Europe and eventually in Japan and the South Pacific, they had no idea who Kilroy was. All they knew is wherever they arrived, Kilroy was already there ahead of them. And the idea of Kilroy, the idea of always having this presence, this beacon of hope in front of their eyes, spurred on the soldiers to develop a little bit of a Kilroy complex and became a bit of a tradition. Whenever you would break through the enemy lines, you would write your own Kilroy was here and add a bit of the marking, so that as they moved forward and onward, it almost ended up that there wasn't a place that Kilroy had not yet been first. If legend has it, Kilroy can be found on the top of Mount Everest at the summit. Kilroy was there. Underneath the Arc de Triomphe, if you look carefully, you will see Kilroy was there first. And if legend is to be believed, on the very moon itself, there is the markings, Kilroy was here. In fact, when Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill came together at the conclusion of the war to divide up Europe, they built a special outhouse just for the three leaders. The first one to use it was Stalin. And Stalin walks into the outhouse and comes out, turns in Russian, and says to his advisor, who's Kilroy? Because apparently Kilroy had been there first as well. Now, why do I bring that up specifically when it comes to the JAMI Mental Health Awareness Shabbat? I bring it up for one very essential and one very important reason. The Sidrot, the Parshiot of Shemot Va'era Bo and Bishalach are all about seeing the signature of God in creation. The Ramban says very clearly that the whole purpose of miraculous interventions of Hashem at that time was simply to ensure that even when things are particularly dark later on down the road, when the hand of God is hidden, we can realize that he's still there and you're always with someone supporting you. You are never walking alone. And for us to have the emunah, the faith, to see the signature of Hashem in all the things that we encounter, perhaps that can add a little bit of light into times which can be particularly dark. Realizing that there are many ambassadors, emissaries of God, agents helping to ensure that we are supported and we are never alone. Whether they take the form of friends and family, whether they take the form of a community, or the services that are provided in the wider community to care for and to reach out to those who are in need. It's all the signature of Hashem. And to train our eyes to be able to see that, hopefully can give us chizuk, hopefully can give us strength to realize that whatever we encounter, wherever we may go, Hashem is always there with us. And perhaps his signature might look a little bit different than Kilroy's, but nonetheless, he's always present in our lives. I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and wish everyone only well in the refuas hanefesh and refuas haguf, both from any ailments and illnesses of the soul, as well as those of the mind and the body and the spirit. We're going to move now to the Kabbalah Shabbat. Stay tuned. I'll be back with you in just a moment. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to bring you now Rabbi Daniel Epstein as he shares with us his Kabbalah Shabbat.